Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I have a subscriber submitted experience that one takes place in my second home state of Maine, and two is just absolutely mind-blowing. I know that the Penobscot Native American tribe, or tribes, different branches of them, up in Maine have a lot of very superstitions and their own kind of lore. This experience fits into all of that lore. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost you a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into today's upload, shall we? All right, so for a little backstory, this experience happened in 1983 by the subscriber who reached out to me. His name is Russell, and his dad is also named Russell. His dad has since passed. It happened in or around Baxter State Park, which is in Maine, north central Maine, very far away from the ocean. Just a very beautiful place. I've been to Baxter a couple different times. And it happened in a location near Mount Katahdin. And Mount Katahdin is a sacred mountain for the Penobscot. I'm going to give you some backstory on that area, and then a little bit of backstory on Russell, and then the experience. It is truly a mind-blowing experience, as well as the backstory of the whole area. So let's jump into it. All right, so backstory on this region. I have been to this area before. I've camped at Baxter State Park many times with my family. Mount Katahdin is located in the northern half of the state of Maine. It has more than a few claims to fame. For those hiking the Appalachian Trail, it is where the trail in question comes to an end or begins, whichever way you look at it. It's a national monument as well. It also has a rich history with the Penobscot Native Americans who inhabited that region, or still do, for thousands of years. There's an article written by a gentleman named Sam Scapani. He explored an aspect of the history of this region. And it was a creature known as Pamola. Scapani writes that Pamola has been described in legends as hideous, bird-like with spindly legs, a long arm, sharp beak, and a violent temper, and that it's historically considered the protector of the mountain. The Penobscot actually view this creature as a god. The article goes further. Pamola began to show up in stories told by the non-indigenous residents, as well as visitors to Maine, including being referenced in Henry David Thoreau's The Maine Woods. Now, what's interesting in this article that was written by Scapani, it traces Pamola's evolving appearance entails including the addition of more moose-like characteristics, as seen as in artwork for a beer can. Now, questions remain over the ethics of referencing indigenous legends like this. Scapani addresses this, noting that the Wabanaki knowledge keepers, which are the Penobscot, today prefer to keep the most sacred stories about Pamola within their tribe, which, when it comes to sacred knowledge, seems understandable. Still, the way perceptions of Pamola have changed over the years makes for fascinating reading, and a story that is still being told. So pretty much, I understand what they're saying. I have an uncle and aunt, and a cousin, three cousins that still live, two that live on the res, one lives in the city now, in Hogansburg or the Akwesasne Reservation. And because of the internet and other, TikTok, Reddit, creepypastas and such, native lore has become kind of a mockery. Wendigo. In my culture, Mohawk, there's a small little museum up there. And the first time introduced to the Wendigo ever, I was probably 13, maybe 14. And there's a painting of a emaciated human being, a black mist, and a white creature that is crossed between a Bigfoot and a demon. It had a very weird tail, very creepy looking painting. But I understand completely, with creepypastas, people are seeing skinwalkers in Georgia. Which it's not. Yenadalushi is a Navajo name for skinwalker. Now, what people may be seeing is a shapeshifter. Totally different. But that native lore, that Yenadalushi, the skinwalker, that name means something to those people. Just like Pamola. It should not be on a beer can. You know what I mean? So anyway, some history there. Just, I wanted to explain that because the internet has really destroyed a lot of legend also, but as well as serious research. People can't distinguish nowadays a creepypasta or a real experience. And I mean, there's been times that I've had almost a near argument with somebody telling me that a creepypasta story is a true event. And I ended up finding the person that wrote it and sent the person the email saying, this is who wrote this story, Yes, it sounds like. So Mount Katahdin also is notorious for deaths. There's been 60 or more deaths on Katahdin since 1933. So they're not even counting prior to that, which hundreds, thousands. More than 60 people have died on Mount Katahdin since 1933. When the first known death was recorded in Baxter State Park, the mountain is often near the top of the list for the most deadly low mountains on Earth, with more fatalities per foot of elevation gained than some higher mountains in the Himalayas. Some of the most common causes of death on Mount Katahdin include leg injuries, exhaustion, dehydration, disorientation, heart attack, some people ending their own, traumatic injuries, drowning, and lightning strikes. The most famous hike to the summit of Mount Katahdin is along Knife Edge, a glacial artery that is only 3 feet wide in some places. The trail requires careful footing and steady nerves, but it can be an incredible hike on good weather. So you've got steeped in Native American culture, in lore. It is already known as one of the most dangerous low mountains in North America, the world. I mean, they're comparing it into the Himalayas. Now, Katahdin is the northern terminus of the Appalachian Trail and is near a stretch known as the 100-mile wilderness. Though part of the Appalachian mountain system, Katahdin is isolated from that range and sits largely on its own. So it is just a beautiful mountain, but a force of its own. Now, I wanted to kind of share this, and then we'll jump into the experience, because I think knowing the backstory of places is just as important as the experience when researching. And I use all of these experiences that I've gathered as research, and so should everyone else, if you ask me. But I'm no expert. I'm just sharing info, so I apologize. The spirit of Mount Katahdin. There's an ancient magic in Maine's highest mountain. Whether or not they have heard the song, Climb Every Mountain, some Penobscot natives are shy about climbing to the top of Mount Katahdin. That's because it is holy ground. Is it the wind bird who lives up there flapping his wings to create great storms? Or is it the spirit of Mount Katahdin jealous of his solitude? Or is it the dominion of, Gluskep, creator of the earth? Whatever your choice of spirits, the aspect of the supernatural is strong. In the piece for Sierra Magazine, Jason Mark points to Robert Moore's book on trails for an elevated example of the sublime, as well as the tension that existed between Penobscot guides and explorers who employed them. In 1846, Henry David Thoreau made a failed bid to climb Katahdin, the highest peak in the state of Maine. He and two companions made their way to the base by canoe, guided by an old native man named Louis Neptune, who advised Thoreau to leave a bottle of rum on the top of the mountain to appease the mountain spirits. Thoreau and his party got lost in the fog and never made it to the summit, according to Moore. Time has erased the trifling detail of who ended up with the rum. But Moore notes that while descending, alarmed by a savage majesty of mountains, hunched shoulders around him, Thoreau experienced a 150 proof insight. Sierra Magazine calls it a meltdown. I printed this article out, and it's kind of wonky. This was that earth of which we heard made out of chaos and old night. Here was no man's garden, but unhand-celled globe. It was not lawn, nor pasture, nor mead, nor woodland, nor wasteland. Man was not to be associated with Mount Katahdin. It was matter, vast, terrifying rocks, trees, wind on your cheeks, the solid earth, the actual world, the common sense, contact. That was a little bit of what Thoreau wrote about Katahdin. The mountain is a dangerous place. Obviously, with the history of the Penobscot, there are still native Penobscots that refuse to hike up there. There is tales of creatures beside the Pamola that resemble, obviously, Bigfoot, Dogmen, and others. But the godlike creature that the Penobscot talk about is what Russell believes his father saw. And after talking with him and such, and him listening to other things, we both kind of came to a conclusion that what his dad saw was a mountain giant. And when the Penobscot natives are at this, base of this mountain, and they see this gigantic man-like creature, what are they going to refer that to? A god. It only makes sense, right? Let's get into some quick background on Russell, his dad, in this experience. All right, so now we have the information about Mount Katahdin, the Penobscot lore and such, which it is much more than Pamola. There are other creatures and such that I had mentioned before. So Russ is who we will refer to as Russell's dad. Russell is the gentleman who contacted me. This experience happened in 1983 on a hiking trail called Cathedral Trail. Now, Russ was a merchant marine. He had grown up in the northern part of coastal Maine in an area called Lubec. When it was time for him to get a job or go to college, he ended up going to the Merchant Marine Academy, and that's what he chose to do for his living. He was on the ocean 9 months a year, essentially. And when he was home, he wasn't home. Russell's dad, Russ, was not an alcoholic. He didn't even drink. Russell is the son, decided to follow in his dad's footsteps. He thought that if he became a merchant marine, he would be closer with his dad, because when his dad was home, he was not home. He was one of those people that wasn't meant for family life. He was a great provider. They had all the essentials in life, and whatever they really wanted, they had. His mom, himself, and his sister. So, but his dad wasn't there. He would be on the ocean for 9 months a year, out in international waters, and doing, they would transport goods all around the world. But when he was home, his pastime was being out in the woods. In the winter, he would be snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, hunting, fishing. Any time he was home, he spent probably within a full year, he was home maybe a month total. And the rest of the time he was either working or doing his kind of woodland living. He loved the outdoors. Being Russell didn't see him that much, but knew his dad was a great provider and such. He followed his footsteps and went to this Merchant Marine Academy down in New York. And he was a Merchant Marine for a couple years. But he realized, hey, a lot of these guys that I work with and know from my dad and know from me are alcoholics. At least my dad wasn't that. It probably, it wasn't his fault that he wasn't home. He just wasn't that kind of, his structure wasn't made for being cooped up, raising a family. As much as he loved his family, he did. He provided for them. And that's one thing Russell wanted me to key in on his dad, is that he was not an alcoholic. So it was not alcohol, that an alcohol-induced kind of hallucination or whatever. His health was good. You know, even though he had a strenuous job, he maintained a healthy regimen of eating and exercise and, you know, hiking, this and that. So he had gotten home, and Russell is down at the academy. It was 1983. And Russell has done this hike, this Cathedral trail. He's done it twice. And he did it once right after his dad told him about the experience, and 5 years later after his dad passed away, to spread his ashes. Both times looking for some kind of evidence of what happened. His dad was not a liar. He was not a tall teller. He was just, you know, just a guy. So he chose to go to this area called Cathedral Trail. And he had been camping by Katahdin stream. Now, in the beginning, I had mentioned a trailhead called Knife Edge, which was a very dangerous trail. Cathedral, almost as dangerous, strenuous, a very taxing hike, but beautiful, Russell said. So I guess what the day started out, he had been there for 5 days, Russ, and he had already hiked a couple of other trails off of Katahdin, but he wanted to go on this Cathedral Trail. The reason why it's called this is because there are 3 peaks that resemble a cathedral. And for some reason, it was one of his favorite hikes. So he's going out that way. When he went camping, he would bring the necessities, set his camp up usually in the same location, which would be by Katahdin stream, so he could take advantage of the water. He had access to a couple of trailheads right there within, you know, not far of a walking distance. But he also had access to quickly leave the area in case he had gotten hurt or sick or something. So he's very smart at what he has, you know, done for all of his life. So he gets to this area on this hike, and I guess where Cathedral leads into a area called Saddle and Knife Edge, and it keeps going. And you can almost see Katahdin's face. And he said, picture as you're walking up, you see this huge mountain, but it's almost flat as you're looking at it. And you're like, how am I going to climb that? You know, there's, as you're walking up to it, there's not, it just appears not to be an easy hike. There's just not an angle, a very steep angle, but it actually is hikeable. But it just appears to be just this flat kind of wall. And he is out there just, you know, it's about a 2-mile hike. And he sits down, takes a break. Being that it is a strenuous hike, it's, like I said, 2 miles. We're talking like a 4 to 5 hour hike because of the ruggedness of it. People have died on this trailhead. So he gets to where this area of Saddle and Knife Edge, but he's going to continue to go straight in. And he's resting, he's relaxing, and he notices that at this point, he's got some trail, where the trails go, he can almost kind of see them. He'd still have to hike. He was centered. So Saddle would be on like this side of him. Knife's Edge would be over here. And straight ahead would be where he was going, Cathedral. But to get to Knife's Edge, he'd have to hike a ways. So he's set up, he's taken his kind of midway break, and he at this point notices that the woods has gone completely silent. And when it came just a moment ago, when it came to like the trails positioning, I'm trying to share it as best as I can without ever being there. Going over the map with Russell when we were talking. So he's set up, he's resting, but he notices that there wasn't a lot of noise as he was hiking in. A lot of what he had heard, he said, was, the rocks under my foot, dirt kicking and, occasional branches or leaves getting stepped on. But there wasn't a lot of animal activity at that day. And usually, he said, there wasn't. But today was just a little stranger. There was less. And he had noticed that right off. And it had like this just really odd feeling to it. And he said that this trail is notorious for having a very eerie kind of vibe around it. And so doesn't Knife's Edge and Saddle and all of these other little trails. But his dad, Russ, notices right off, like, something's not right. I'm halfway to where I want to go, or I'm halfway back to my camp. If I continue and something happens, and he's not thinking, he's like, not thinking it's a wild animal. He's just almost like something bad was going to happen. And he couldn't pinpoint what it would be. But he's like, mountain lion, something bad was going to happen. But he's like, if I continue going that way, he goes, I've got now a couple hours more till I get back to camp. Should I just, so he says, I'm going to wait here and I'm going to see how I feel. And then if everything feels good and this eerie feeling goes away, I'll go and hike the rest of the way, set up on the mountain for a little bit. And, it was a beautiful day. So he was like, I'll set up there. And if everything goes smooth, maybe I'll just camp up there under the stars for the night. And because he had a blanket in his pack and stuff, he'd always brought in a blanket in case anything ever happened. But he makes that decision to go further, to push on. And it was a decision that really changed his whole view on Mount Katahdin, Baxter State Park. Because after this trip, he pulled back from going hiking, pulled back from doing more activity like snowshoeing in the winter and such, especially in that area. He didn't stop, but he really, he stayed more away from the park and went to more campgrounds, I guess you'd say. Less isolated locations after this experience. So he goes and he sets out on this rest of the hike. Now he gets to roughly 3/4 of the way to where the peak of the mountain would be and where he could rest. So as he's getting 3/4 of the way, he gets to this one location called Saddle Trail, which I had talked about when he was halfway in. Now, Saddle Trail kind of crisscrosses through the cathedral. And to get to Baxter Peak, he'd have to use the Saddle Trail, which connects to Cathedral. He's right about to that area, and he notices right off, he's mid-step, and he can hear the rocks. You know, if you've ever hiked, and I'm sure many of you have, just, you know, walking outside, you hear your feet kicking dirt, kicking rocks. And especially in an isolated area, that's almost intensified. So he's hiking, and he realizes that not only can he hear his own feet and his own footsteps, but he hears other footsteps. And they sound to be like on the sides of him. So to his left, to his right, and behind him. And he realizes this, and he continues to walk. And he's really not trying to make eye contact or visualize anything that's around him. He is trying to figure out, all right, if there is something here with me, I do have a firearm. I have a pistol with me. He had a 38. It sounds like there's more than one. I don't know what it is. And he's at this point thinking mountain lion. He's not thinking bear at all. Maybe a moose. But then he's like, it can't be a moose. I'm too high up. And this doesn't sound quadruped. So how can it be a mountain lion either? Maybe it's a guy. Maybe it's two guys. Maybe it's three, because something sounds like it's behind me. So he gets to where this saddle comes in, and he's on that now. And he says that at that point, I'm going to turn around and I'm going to do a 360 and get my bearings to me, Russell. I'm going to figure out what the hell has been trailing me. And when he does, he kind of stops and he turns. Now, he has already pulled his revolver out, and he kind of spins. And when he does, he can see movement off to the bush, off to the side in the brush. So, you know, he turns and he sees something, but he doesn't have a full clear vision of what it is. He just sees that it's something large, about his size. And as he gets to this side, he sees something like a bright red color, which is off for this area. Right now, everything is like tan brown or green, or dark brown. So he spins and he sees this red, but he's continuing to spin. He doesn't stop. He wants to do a full quick 360, and whatever comes to his head at that point, I'm either going to finish or I'm going to figure out how to get back. Now, when he catches that red, that's, no pun intended, red flag right away. He turns and he gets to where right behind him. Nothing's there. So now he's back, done a complete 360. He's looking straight ahead at the trail that he was going to continue on. And he hears this growl from this side where he saw the red. On this side of him, he only saw something that appeared to be about his height. But he couldn't, there was no red, there was no color. It was just something that stood out to him. So he hears this growl on this side, and he spins quick, but he's trying to keep a visual and a kind of hearing on what's behind him, because if he's facing this way now, what is on that side is now behind him, so his back is open. He turns, and now what he sees in front of him is a 6 to 7 foot tall creature that resembles a wolf, but it's bipedal. It's this red eye. It's got glowing red eyes midday. We're talking 4 p.m. midday, these bright red eyes. It's this grayish white black color. And it's growling. And it's no more than 30, 40 feet from him. And he now is looking at this, but realizes my back is wide open to another one of these things or something else. Like, what the hell am I looking at? But I know I just saw something behind me. Or on that side, which is now behind him. So at this point, he has 2 options. Turn and figure out how he's going to get back to his camp as quick as possible, or alive, or turn back towards getting to Baxter Peak. That's the decision he makes. So as he turns, he's going back up the trail. He drops his pack because his pack has a lot of weight to it. It's got a blanket in it. It's got some, his water. It's got everything. Only thing that he has right now is his pistol and a knife, a full tanged knife. And he just starts running straight towards Baxter Peak. He has no plan on why he's choosing this. Probably because at that point when he's up there, he's going to have his back will be to a wall. And whatever's coming at him can't be behind him. So he'll have at least a fighting chance in his head that he's thinking about this. He can hear them right on his tail. He's not seen the other one that's been on this side of him yet. Now, he gets to about 1/8 of a mile to Baxter Peak. And he hears this howl, this whine. Like when, the way Russ described it to Russell was when you step on your dog's paw by accident or its tail by accident, and there's that just high-pitched art, kind of like that just, you've hurt your dog by accident. That's what I hear. But prior to this, I'm running straight ahead. My pack is off. I've got my pistol facing this way because that's the side that he visualized, that made eye contact with. So he's like, I'm going to shoot this one first if it's getting closer to me. But they're still on the side of him. They have not crossed the trails or gone behind him or any, they're just boom, right aside of him. When he hears that howl in pain, for some reason, instinctually, he stops and he spins immediately to the one that he saw with the red eyes. And what he sees is he sees it coming. He's 20 feet ahead of it. So he's looking this way and it's coming this way towards him, but it's not trekking at him. It's going in the same direction as him, but not directly at him. So he's got his gun up and he's gonna shoot. He doesn't know if this, 38 is going to do anything to it, but at least he's got something. That's what he's thinking. He's like, Russell, I don't think my gun, if I even fired all shots at it, would have even killed it. Which we know now is probably the truth. Unless, you got it in the eye and it traveled into its brain, or you had a couple lucky shots. So as he's turned and he's pointing his gun and he's watching it, it runs by him, and he turns and he's now facing this way. So he's done a whole 180 now. The trail, Baxter Peak, is behind him. And what he sees is this huge man. And it is at least 20 feet tall, he said to Russell. He said it was a man, Russell. It had hair. It had long hair. It had a beard. And when Russ told Russell this, Russell's first thing was, Dad, he didn't doubt him. He had never heard of Dogman. He had never, everyone in Maine has heard of Bigfoot. That's a no-brainer, especially in northern Maine. But, he didn't doubt his dad because his dad didn't tell tall tales. So he's like, was it a Bigfoot, Dad? Is that? And he's like, no, it was a man. It was at least 20 feet tall. He said it was standing in these trees, and the way these trees, 3 times as tall as me, dwarfing, these creatures. He said when he turned and he saw this one Dogman that was running at his friend, the huge man was palming one of the Dogman's head, and it kind of picked it up and slammed it into the ground. And that was the pained howl that he heard, because by the time this one had crossed the trail and started running towards him, he had slammed it 2 or 3 more times down. Just wham, wham, wham. Powerful. He could hear the thuds. Now he's spinning and he's looking at this, and his gun is still up. He's still has his gun raised. And he watches and he said, this other creature, and he said werewolf or dog creature, because once again, prior to Dogman, his dad was, not into cryptozoology, not into the paranormal. He had heard his dad talk about weird shit that he's seen in the ocean, weird, strange humps, but nothing like Bigfoot, nothing like anything, even knowing the history of the Penobscot and all of that. So he said this Dogman, I'm saying Dogman, just lunged at this man, this giant man, as it's slamming this other Dogman into the ground. And he's looking and he's like, I really thought that this Dogman thing was going to, hit this guy and just start attacking him, because the giant didn't have eye contact. It was like he wasn't looking, and he was just smashing this other one into the ground. But he said when it lunged, and it got the thing in the shoulder, and he kind of threw the one that he had just smashed, threw this dead Dogman into a tree, and it just, buckled the tree, buckled its body. And this thing's biting him, it's clawing him, he can see it. But he's like, Russell, this guy, this whatever, was so large that the Dogman itself was 7 foot tall. Maybe
He said it wasn't that much bigger in height than I was, maybe 6 to 12 inches taller than I. His dad was like 6'1", and Russell's 6'2", so his dad was a little bit shorter than him, he said. So it wasn't that, but when it hit and bit this guy in the shoulders and was clawing at him, he said its arm, this giant's arm, seemed to be as big as this creature that was attacking him. He said, and what it did was it pulled its head. It just grabbed its body and went whoop right off. And he's watching it. Russ is watching this happen, and he sees it, and he doesn't know what to make of it, because right now he just witnessed his own possible death of what would have happened if these two creatures attacked him. But he's just witnessed something so outrageously unnatural and supernatural that he's in shock. His gun's still up, and he's staring at this thing. And he says that the creature, as it ripped its head, and it looked at the Dogman, and it had its head like this, and its body, like its shoulder or arm in one hand. And he said it just smelled it and threw it. And he said it pointed at his dad and went, like, pointed and pointed again, like, push, like, leave, get the hell out of here. Like a double push, not, it didn't touch him, but a point and then another point. And how he was pointing, where Russ was standing, he was on the trail. And as he's pointing, the only thing that was behind him was his camp, the trail back toward his camp. And he did. He's backing up, and he's watching this huge man thing, and he's trying to figure out what the hell just happened. And as he's walking back, this thing's not moving at him. It's just, at this point, it's not staring at him. After it did the double, like, get the hell out of here, it started to look around, like, for the body of the Dogman or what. He didn't know what it was looking for. So he turns, and he said, I saw my backpack. My backpack was 150 feet from where I was standing. I could, see it right there on the trail from where I dropped it and just started running. He said, so I just ran to my backpack, and I picked it up and I put it on, and I turned around, and he said, I saw this thing turn, and it just started walking into the woods. He said, and it was like this mirage, this shimmer just appeared, and he was gone. He said, nothing, no doorway, just this weird shimmer in the daylight, and it was gone. And he had noticed that it had the body of the one that he had thrown that hit the tree and the one that he ripped apart. It had a body in each kind of hand as it was walking, and that shimmer just happened. And it was gone. And he stops at that point, because now he's like, all right, what the hell just happened? I've never seen anything like this. He's heard the Penobscot lore, like all of the non-native residents of that area have, but he's never heard anything like this. He's heard of the Bigfoot, he's heard of this and that, but this is so foreign to him, so unnatural. He puts his pack on, and he makes a conscious decision to walk ahead. and see if he can see any blood or any kind of scuffle that can make this, that it just happened. Because after he saw that mirage thing, this just kind of whatever, he almost thought like maybe he had overdone it. Maybe he had heat stroke. Maybe, something, just whatever. And he imagined this all. So as he's walking back from where his backpack is, he can see roughly where this incident just transpired. Mind you, his backpack was 150 feet behind him. He was about 50 feet from this event that just happened in front of him. So 200 feet, and he walks it. And he is now like, I'm just going to look. I'm not even finishing this hike. I don't even want to be here. But I need to kind of see if there's like blood, if there's dirt, kicked around, a proof of a fight, proof of something that transpired here. So he gets beyond the tree line, the brush line, where this giant was standing, and he gets in it, and he sees this spray of blood on the leaves and trees and shit. And he sees that in these, pine, acidically ground area, that it does look like there's scuffle marks and all this other shit that happened. And he said, okay, this really happened. What the hell is that? And he makes it back to his camp. The whole way he's just terrified. Absolutely terrified. He's holding his pistol. He's got his backpack on. He's keeping an eye over his shoulders. Any kind of noise he hears, he's jumping. Like, what the hell was that? Gets to his camp and makes the decision, I'm going to stay here one night more. And then I'm going to go home. I'm going to, I can't drive, but I think I'm okay here. And he stays there for the night. He then gets up, packs his camp up, and heads home. I guess after that is when everything changed for his dad. His dad his family started to realize slowly that he wasn't going out as long. He was still going camping and whatever, but it wasn't for a week, 2 weeks on end. It was, a couple of days. I'm going to go to this campsite. I'm going to be here. I'm going to go here, go to Acadia. But never deep in Baxter or Mount Katahdin. And he had never mentioned this to anyone. Russell said that he never told my mom. He said one day me and my dad were sitting on his back porch, and we were having coffee. We were talking about tearing down this kind of old barn that was in the back. And he looked at me and he said, I got to tell you something that happened back in 1983, but you can't tell your mother. I've never told anyone this, but I need to share this with somebody, because I don't know if I went crazy that day or if what I saw really happened. He goes, and where we live, the Native American lore is strong here. And it is very supernatural. It is very dangerous, kind of like, the tales that they have heard are about, people being hunted by whatever. And he tells Russell, and Russell's just kind of looking at him like, what the hell? This is my dad. Like, my dad doesn't believe in ghosts. My dad has never talked about ghosts. My dad just, periodically he would talk about, something weird that caught him off guard while out in the sea. People acting strange during the northern lights, or, something weird harvest moon while you're out on the ocean coming in. Just stuff like that, but that can be kind of explained. So then after his dad tells him this, he said, I had to go up. I had to see, this is long before, 1983. He said, my dad told me this. It was about 1998, maybe. He said, so I had to, go up. There was no, people talking about this on YouTube. There was nothing like that at that point. He said, I needed to see for myself. And he said he went up there and everything was fine. He said, both times that I've hiked there, I never had an incident, ever. I never felt weird. I never felt afraid. He said the last time in 2004, when he spread his dad's ashes, he said, I put my dad's ashes, part of them, in the area of Saddle Trail, Cathedral Trail, going towards Baxter Peak. He said, I wanted to put some there. My dad never told me to. He said, but he said, because my dad told me his experience, he said, I figured maybe he'd like it to be his ashes to be there. So maybe he could, in his afterlife, figure out what everything was that transpired. Years go by, and Russell starts to, look into things. He's never had an experience of his own. He's never had any kind of Bigfoot sighting, nothing. But after his dad told him this, he really became interested in, the paranormal, portals, vortexes, everything and anything surrounding whatever. And for the longest time, when he started to go to YouTube and newer books were coming out about Dogman, he realized, shit, that's what Dad saw, was two dogmen. But what was the giant guy? Was that a Bigfoot? Even though his dad said no, it was not a Bigfoot. It was a huge man. Like, he did have beard. He had like a beard, not a groomed beard, obviously, but long hair, but skin. You could see skin. You could see he was just a human form, but just gigantic. And that's, through the years, he had started to learn about Native American lore in the Southwest, Lovelock Cave giants, this and that. And that's when he started to say, holy shit, maybe my dad saw a giant, a Nephilim. And then he reads and learns more about, that's when he starts looking more into the Penobscot lore of this mountain, Mount Katahdin, and how they viewed as a god up there. And like I said in the very beginning, you're Native American, right? Thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago, before European settlers are here. You're a Native American and you're hunting by Mount Katahdin, and you look up and you see a 20-foot human-like thing that's, 3 times the size of you. What are you going to think that is? A god. And that's when he was like, I really think Dad saw a giant. And I really think that it just, that shimmer, that kind of mirage, kind of whatever, was it walking into a portal. And I was like, did he mention like a metallic noise? Did he mention any kind of noise, like a vibration or anything? And he said no, but maybe Dad maybe he didn't remember hearing it and share it with me, because it was years after his experience when he finally shared it with his son, 15 years later. And then 5 years later, he passes away. So 20 years had gone by. He's not going to remember, holy shit, I heard these, chimes or whatever. It was making this vibrating noise. No, all he remembers is this horrific attack and these dogmen getting savagely torn apart and killed. But was that giant protecting him from those dogmen? Or were the dogmen, he said this too, were the dogmen protecting my dad from the giant? But if that's the case, why did it point at him twice to kind of tell him to leave? And I flat out said, Russell, I have no idea, man. Holy shit. That's insane. And then I looked into, some more information on Katahdin. I mean, I've heard weird stuff about Baxter Park. My aunt lives in Bar Harbor. She was on Mount Desert Island. And, going there in summers and working there. And, I've shared my weird Maine experiences before. But I've never heard of anything like that, I've had a weird experience walking close to the area where Somme Sound is, and there's supposedly a witch that's in that area and such, but nothing like this. And I really think that that giant may have been protecting him, even though he was non-indigenous. But maybe he knew, hey, this guy's a good guy, or maybe there is some kind of hatred for dogmen between this thing, and I don't know. But it's really crazy that, I wish kind of a little bit, and even Russell said, I kind of wish Dad was still alive so I could ask him about like a metallic noise or a vibrating noise. He goes, but, back then you don't think about that stuff because no one was talking about that stuff at that time. And I was like, absolutely, it is just unbelievably insane. And then to look at the area with a map while I was talking to him, and looking at, pictures of the area too, I could visualize where he was on Google Maps. And I'm like, wow, this is right here. Holy cow. And where this giant disappeared into a portal was less than a 1/16 of a mile from the top of the mountain right to Baxter Peak. Unbelievably crazy. Guys, thank you for supporting the channel. I do hope you all enjoyed this upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. Once again, your support is what keeps this channel growing and going, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone's treated with the respect we all deserve, and that's because of you, so thank you. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real. These events are real. Share this information with the people that you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions. Never stop searching for the truth. And God bless you all.